Hello there, everybody. My name is Ashley Hunt. I'm the Senior Project Management Instructor here at Storman Studios. And I thought I would talk today about 5 lessons or takeaways from P&P training that all managers need. And there's a reason why the Project Management Institute asks that you take 35 hours of official project management training. And the reason why is that beneficial best practices, while maybe have been heard of or are used throughout the world, may not be universal. There might be things that we cover in class that you've never used before. And in fact, there's a lot of aha or light bulb moments in my classes where people are like, maybe we should do that. The takeaways for your real world go above and beyond just taking and passing an exam. So I thought I would put them together for you and just give you an overview of some of the lessons to be aware of for all project managers. Number 1, start the way that you expect to finish. Number 2, determine your life cycle and your governance that's appropriate for your current projects. Number 3, identify and engage your stakeholders always iteratively. Number 4, practice effective risk management every single day. And number 5, be a leader and a manager. In fact, the new P&P exam is broken out in 3 domains. People, 42% of your exam is about people. Process, 50% of your exam is about best practices and processes that we cover in training, some of which you may have never used before. And the third one is business environment and how the business impacts your projects in the beginning and all the way through. So start the way that you expect to finish. Most organizations will have business analysts or your sponsors or your project management office, something like that, putting together a business case. For the most part, they're crunching the money, right? They want to make sure that whatever projects they decide to sponsor is going to give them some kind of ROI. But economic feasibility is just a piece of this. It's also going to be the document that allows everybody to determine, have we been successful at the end of the project? What are our objectives? What are the reasons for this project? And the business case is used all the way through to validate. And it may represent a go or no-go decision. Should we do this project or not? Most project managers aren't really involved in this process. Some of you might be, but it's an important document to make sure that you understand, that you've reviewed, and possibly even questioned, because you're going to be responsible for the benefits that the organization achieves based on the project. That's why we have a benefits management plan. So above and beyond the money side, or here's why we're deciding to do this, the organization is also making basically an elevator pitch. Here's why we're doing this. Here's why this is beneficial. Here's how this project strategically aligns to what we're trying to accomplish, right? Who's the benefits owner? I mean, a lot of this has to do with cost validation and why we're choosing to pay for a project, but it also has assumptions and risks. Now, if the project that they're selecting is based on the benefits management plan and the actual business case, and they decide, they being management, yeah, let's go forward with this project. The next step is a project charter. Now, a lot of times, project managers are involved in this process, either as expert judgment, maybe you're writing it yourself. The bottom line is a project cannot begin without a charter. Why? Because it provides an overview, measurable project objectives, related success criteria. It's pretty high level, right? Because we haven't gotten in and actually started to plan out the project. Especially in agile projects, it's much more high level. This is more representing a predictive project, meaning we know what the scope of work is and we can plan toward it. Overall project risk, summary milestones, schedules, pre-approved financial resources, key stakeholders, etc. But the key piece of the project charter from the project manager's perspective is that it names you as the authorized assigned project manager. It gives you the authorization to utilize organizational resources. This is your formal power, what I call your ticket, to ride the project management roller coaster. Now, some of you might use a statement of work. And that's okay too, if that's what you call it in your organization. But either way, we want that kickoff document. Then, lesson 2, determine your life cycle and your governance. Many of you probably already know governance. We'll take a look at that. Enterprise environmental factors, organizational processes. But in the beginning, because each project is unique, we have to decide what our life cycle is, especially if you're using a variety of different life cycles, depending on the deliverables. Is it predictive? Do we have the scope of work? Can we front load a plan? Yes or no? No? Oh, well then maybe we want to use something like Scrum or another agile framework. Maybe you're using a little bit of both. I'm hearing a lot from people in my classes that they're using hybrids. They're doing stand-up meetings, but they're also doing, project management plan with baselines and so on. Or is it phase oriented? Because sometimes when you have sequential phases or overlapping phases, that can change the way that you actually plan and execute project work. But as far as the enterprise environment is concerned, all organizations have a culture and industry standards, legal influencing factors, the governance or the culture and the governance of your organization, and then also stakeholder expectations and risk thresholds. Some stakeholders are more willing to take a risk and others maybe not. So that's good to know. Also, some organizations and industries are risk-taking. Pharmaceuticals, that's a risk-taking organization. But we also have our processes. This is what our organization says, you need to do it this way, unless we find a better way of doing things. And if that's the case, we can contribute to the health of our organization. But for the most part, they're like, this is how we do things. Organizational standards. Do you have portfolios, programs, and projects, obviously, but reporting methods, templates, lessons learned. So we have process and we have environment, both of which affect the governance, maybe even the life cycle of how we go forward with our projects. The project governance framework, is different for every organization. It has to do with success and acceptance criteria and how you escalate and resolve issues. What are the relationships between different departments and external stakeholders and org charts and how you communicate and so on, decision making and so on. Process for stage gate or phase gate reviews. It's also the process for review and approval of changes above the project manager's authority. Do you have formal change control, or are you allowed to make a lot of these changes yourself? It depends. It depends on how the project is governed. Some of the guidelines, obviously, organizational decision makers are saying, here's how we do things. This is how we govern, especially if you have compliance or regulations that you have to keep on top of. Document your lessons learned. These are going to be things that you're doing all the way through to contribute not only to the health of your organizational processes and environment, but also if governance changes, that may lead to an update in the guidelines. Lesson 3, project stakeholder management. Super important, easier said than done. Obviously, it's supposed to be very structured in order to identify all the stakeholders that are involved in your projects, keep up to date, make sure we're engaging them, make sure that we're communicating effectively, make sure that we're adapting how we do things to the ever-changing needs of our stakeholders. These are also the people, though, that we collect requirements from. So if we miss a stakeholder, then we might miss an actual requirement. For a lot of you, you're working with the same people over and over and over again. That makes this process more streamlined. If you're working with new people, then it will be important to really document who they are, what department are they in, what are their requirements, what time zone, what email, their preferred method of communications, so that you have this running list. It's called a stakeholder register, which is living, breathing, updatable documentation so that you can plot out your engagement strategy. Stakeholders come in a variety of different categories, right? The person or group that the project affects. This could be an internal end user or an external customer who comes to you for software or for hardware or for some other kind of deliverable. A house, a construction project. You also have the project sponsor. They're the folks that actually hold the purse strings on the project usually and help the project manager throughout. The customer, internal or external, you have your team. Maybe you have people that you borrow from functional departments. That would make functional managers also stakeholders. And then potentially you have a project management office, change control board, etc. But having these categories and being able to break them down and identify the individuals as part of those categories goes a really long way toward project success. Lesson 4, practice effective risk management daily. This is so important. Usually people fall on one side of this or the other. They're either like, oh yeah, we do risk management all the time. And we grab fire extinguishers and we put out the fires daily. So it really is a divergence. There's not like sort of in between risk management, but risk lives on the project level and individual risks. This is iterative. This is something that we're doing constantly because things change throughout the course of the project, and risk becomes a big influencing factor of whether or not the project is successful. Although risk falls into two categories. We have threats and opportunities. Clearly, the threats are going to be the things that impact us the most. So a risk management plan is an excellent way to really plot out funding. Do you have contingency reserves? What's our strategy? And you'll notice that on the right-hand side, I have more bolded because these tend to be the more important aspects of this plan. The how-to guide for risk management. What categories of risk are we dealing with? How can we break that down to individual risk levels? The stakeholder risk appetite. Are they risk takers? Are they risk averse? Are they sort of in the middle, like convince me? Definitions of probability and impact. This is really important because if your stakeholders are risk takers, they might look at an identified risk as a yellow or a 3 or a medium. Whereas somebody who is a risk-averse person is going to say, no, that's a red, that's a 5, that's a high. And so the best thing that we can do as project managers is get everybody on the same page and say, if this risk affects our schedule by being behind schedule 20 days, that's a 3. 50 days, that's a 5. So it gets everybody on the same page because the people who do the work know the risks. They're the ones that are identifying it, and stakeholders as well, above and beyond your team. That gives us the ability to really plot out probability and impact to make the best decisions on what's near term, far term, what responses do we use, who's the best person to implement the response, and so on. Once you have that plan, you begin from the very beginning. Remember, there's risk in the business case, there's risk in the project charter, and there's risk everywhere on the project. So that's the first step. The second step is to have a living, breathing risk register that allows you to keep track of identified risks. What category is it in? Is it scope, schedule, budget, etc.? What's the description? Who's the person who's going to implement the response, the risk owner? What's the impact? What's the probability? And what's our risk score? Like I use a 1 through 5 scale, and then it builds in the stoplight, the red, yellow, and green. Risk priority number, risk indicator. These are called triggers. Trigger, it lets us know the risk event's on its way. Then what's our strategy? What's our response? What's our action plan? And then also, did our action plan actually work? So the processes of planning for risk iteratively are identify the risks every single day. Qualitative, let's qualify that information, let's prioritize, let's categorize, let's do probability and impact based on the actual risk management plan. Quantitative, is there a budgetary impact of some kind or schedule impact that we need to take a deeper look at, maybe statistically or mathematically? And then what's our responses for the threats and the opportunities? Super important and iteratively done. Lesson 5, and this is important no matter what. Be a leader and a manager. There's a big focus now on emotional intelligence, being able to collaborate effectively, adaptive leadership, negotiation, conflict resolution. Look, the world right now is weird. There's a lot going on. A lot of us are virtual. And so it's going to be more important as a project manager to, yes, manage your tasks and your schedules and your budgets and so on, but lead your people. And easier said than done, right? A lot of these are aspirational skills, but we can work toward that. We can find a balance between management and leadership. I mean, management, best practices, efficiency, having that formal power via the charter, doing things correctly, being task-oriented. Yeah, let's cross the work off and make sure we're doing it correctly. And at the same time, balancing that leadership side of things, communication, understanding people, building effective teams, making sure that your principles are correct and everybody knows that you're doing the right things and you're doing the things right. Motivation and empowerment, so important right now. Encouragement to be self-directed, meaning your team has the power to be self-directed. A lot of that is going to feed into something called servant leadership. This is actually an agile term, but the new PMP exam is 50% agile and 50% predictive. So servant leadership is all about that emotional intelligence and helping your team transform into better versions of themselves. Encourage personal growth. Give the environment the ability to thrive, no matter how weird things happen to be. Service as a fundamental reason you're there. Every single day I would ask myself, what can I do to help my team be more successful today? Build those trusting relationships. Create commitment from your team. build that community, virtual or otherwise. And my favorite, nurturing the spirit and the joy. Might be hard right now, but it's our job to help our team be very successful, be supportive, have that emotional intelligence, practice active listening, and really try and understand what your team is going through and how you can help them be more successful today. Super important. So those are the 5 lessons. Start the way you expect to finish, determine your life cycle and governance, identify and engage your stakeholders, practice effective risk management daily, and be a leader and a manager. So those are my 5 lessons. Those are the things that I really pay attention to when I'm managing projects and what we talk about a lot in the class. Not the only thing. There's 35 hours and there's a lot of best practices and processes out there that we discuss. If you would like more information, you can go out to www.pmi.org. That's where the certifications for PMP, Certified Associate in Project Management, if you're just starting out in your career, or if you want to get Agile certifications, you can look up all that information there. And if you're interested in PMP training, feel free to come out to our website, www.stormwindstudios.com. It's been a pleasure putting this video together for you. Stay safe out there, and I'll put together another video soon. Thanks, everybody.